So I remember that you didn't finish college. How many years did you do?
2 years.
Where did you go?
I went to UC Berkeley.
And what was your major?
Math.
So when you left school, why did you leave school?
I just, I lost interest. I was too busy doing other things. When I went out to school, first I got a job in a Chinese restaurant. It was like a new age hippie Chinese restaurant. It was all trying to be organic with brown rice and stuff. And although they had a Chinese cook, they also had a Jewish cook who was married to a Chinese girl. And first they had me be a busboy, and then they taught me how to prep the the vegetables and other things, and eventually how to cook the Chinese food. And so I did that. While I was doing that, these students started a record service. And that was because, the UC Berkeley campus was known for lots of activism. There were strikes and there was often tear gassing. Most of that was gone from the 60s by the time I went there. But there were still some tear gassings, and I got gassed by accident there. So the student government at the UC Berkeley used to make all kinds of pronouncements. They would say they were against nuclear power, or they would issue edicts as if they had meaning, which mostly the regents of the university didn't care. But then one day they decided that they were going to give money to the Black Panthers, which was a pretty violent group, protest group of African Americans. And then the regent said, no, your money is for like new chess sets and band uniforms. So they took over all of the money of the student council. So some of the student council senators, as they were known, decided that they wanted to raise money another way. And a couple of them came up with the idea of a record buying service. So near the Chinese restaurant, they rented like sort of a big storage closet, and they would put out a card table, and you could go there and you could order your records. And then they would go to what was known as a one-stop. It was like a wholesale record store. It was laid out like a record store where you could go through the bins. It was for small record stores who only needed to buy not a full box of records. A box of records was about 25 records. So if you wanted two or three of a certain title, you'd go to the one-stop. So that's what they'd do. They'd take the orders from students, and they'd go and buy the records, and they'd bring them back the next day, and they would mark them up. But at that time, we had laws called fair trade laws. So records were either $4.98, $5.98, or $6.98, and sometimes the record companies would let you sell them for $1 discount. So a $4.98 record might be $3.98. But we sold the $4.98 records, they sold them for $2.79. That was really cheap, a good deal. So students started buying lots of records. I noticed that, and they became so busy that they decided that they needed to actually get a store. So at that point, I got a job with them. And originally they called the closet, the storage closet, the Leopold Stokowski Memorial Record Pavilion. But they opened up the store, and it was known as Leopold's. And it was way up a flight of stairs because it was really cheap real estate. It was like a kind of place that would have been nearly impossible to rent. So the landlord was more than happy to rent it to them really, really dirt cheap. It was like an attic of this building. And we filled it with records, and I did all of the buying of jazz music. Of course, we had all kinds of, and it was a huge, huge success because we were selling records cheap, even though we weren't supposed to. We were going to get in big trouble, but then they actually made the fair trade laws illegal. So fair trade ended, and our business exploded. It became a gigantic, gigantic business. This was the early 1970s, and the record business was really hot. There were lots of great bands, lots of great records were being put out, and so we were doing an unbelievable volume of business. We didn't know what the hell we were doing, right? We didn't know anything about business, but we were selling a lot of records. So we kept expanding and expanding. We actually opened up a hi-fi store we called Igor's Boogie Stereo, which is Igor's Boogie is the name of a Mothers of Invention album, Frank Zappa. And we did all kinds of stuff. Unfortunately, we didn't know how to make money, and mostly we were losing money, but we were selling so many records that the record company actually came to us and sent one of their finance guys, and he helped us put our books in order.
What record company?
Warner Brothers did, because they said to us, you're getting in real big trouble because you owe us a lot of money, you can't pay us. But frankly, you're selling so many records, we're going to help you straighten this all out because we love how many records you're selling. Because we were only one block off the Berkeley campus. Berkeley campus had like 50,000 students and drew people from all over the Bay Area. And, but in the end, Leopold's ended up with like 6 or 7 stores, and really we sold millions and millions of records. And it was a great time because I bought the jazz. I also handled all of the returns, if people said the record was warped or broken or it was unsold goods, meaning they would ship us a lot of goods and we could exchange what we didn't sell for others, and they would recycle the records literally. We did a lot of crazy stuff. That was a period of time when George Harrison brought out the Concert for Bangladesh record. And we sold so many of them, and George and Capitol Records said all the profits were going to go to Bangladesh. Well, they said that they were going to give the money, but we decided that instead we were going to donate the money directly to George Harrison. We literally sold about 300,000 copies of the Concert for Bangladesh. So we contacted George Harrison's manager and said we would give him a check for $300,000, and he was impressed. So he came, and right in the middle of Shattuck Avenue, he put on a little concert, and we gave him a big $300,000 check. Well, the guys from Capitol were super angry about that because that's not what was supposed to happen. But they ended up, because it was all being publicized, so they were out on the street with us, with George Harrison. We handed Harrison the big check, and he was very nice, and he was very happy. And the guy was smiling, and I said, "See, you're happy and smiling." He says, "I'm gritting my teeth. I'd like you dead." It was a great experience, but it was exhausting because, as I said, we really didn't know what we were doing. We could have made a lot of money, and we did often give money away to the community, like the original idea of it. And the original name of the corporation was called Students of Berkeley, meaning we were a bunch of real SOBs. But later we changed the name to Leopold's Records. And one of the things that happened there was we were so successful that CBS owned a chain of record stores called Discount Records. And Discount Records, as I said, was a place where they'd give you $1 off the list price of the record, like Sam Goody's did back here. And we met everybody because we were famous in the record industry. We were selling more records per store than any other record store except for one, Tower Records. So we literally put the Discount Record store right out of business because we were just much cheaper, and we had a bigger store, we had bigger selection, and so they went right out of business. The manager of that store was a guy named Hale Milgram, and he was really pissed off at us, but he moved to LA and he ended up becoming president of Warner Brothers. So actually he ended up being very happy we put them out of business. And along the way, I met the founder of Tower Records, Russ Solomon, and we would always say to him, "Don't come to Berkeley, don't come to Berkeley." But of course, he opened up a store 3 doors down from us in Berkeley. And we went to war with him in many ways. But in the end, we both did tremendous amount of business together. And we became very good friends over the years, although he passed away not that long ago, sadly. At that time, of course, if you sold a lot of records, you could get free tickets to everything. So I got free tickets to everything. I could go to every club in the entire Bay Area and see every band I wanted. The Grateful Dead, Cream came, anybody famous, Eric Clapton, all of the artists, Creedence Clearwater, bands of every type, psychedelic bands, other kinds of bands. And eventually, it didn't even matter whether I was in the record business. It's just I ended up knowing the club owners and the promoters and the security people, and I could just walk in. They would just let me in. So at that point in time, for instance, Elvis Costello made his first tour. He played at a club called the Old Waldorf. I went in early because they just let me in. I was sitting around with the bartender having a drink while they were just milling around. And then, he played. He was unbelievably good. And then afterwards, he came back out to have a drink, and he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm nobody. I'm just the lounge lizard here." And he goes, "Oh, come on, they're serving you hand and foot." And I said, "No, really, I'm nobody. I'm just the guy. I've been coming so long, they just let me in." And he says, "Oh, good." And so he introduced himself. His real name is Declan McManus. And he told me that music saved him from being a computer programmer, which turned out to be a fairly common explanation for me, because I also met some other musicians who told me a similar story. I saw Tom Petty on his first tour there. I saw just so many incredibly good artists. I saw the Grateful Dead so many times, I literally got sick of seeing them, even though, I have a lot of great memories of them. So it was a wonderful time being in the record business, and it led me to getting a job with CBS. Because we had put the discount record chain store out of business, they offered me a job at Columbia Records. And I took the job, but I said that I, wanted to take a break because I was exhausted. So I did. I took a little vacation. When I came back, they said, "Well, we have good news and bad news." And I said, "Well, what's the bad news?" And they said, "Well, the bad news is we had a restructuring at Columbia Records, and we laid off over 500 people. And your job has been eliminated. There's no job in the record business. But the good news is we own this chain of stores called Pacific Stereo, and you can get a job there." So I went to work at Pacific Stereo, which of course sort of was the lead into me having my career in the audio business. And I had told you we had opened up a stereo store called Igor's Boogie Stereo, so I knew about stereos and about buying them, selling them. So I became involved there. I did marketing. I managed stores. I sold a lot of stereo to all kinds of people, like all baseball Hall of Famers, football Hall of Famers. So I sold stereos to the Oakland Raiders, to the Golden State Warriors, to the Oakland A's. Had a lot of fun. And then after that, I became a manufacturer's representative, meaning I was a marketing agent in California for all kinds of electronics brands. And one of those brands eventually was the brand Denon, which was being imported by another company called Diskwasher. And they decided that they wanted to set up on their own. And I actually was leaving my rep firm because the principal, the owner of the rep firm, sold it to a couple of the guys that worked there. And that wasn't a good situation for the rest of us. So we all split up, and I ended up going to work for Denon.
And what did you do at Denon?
Well, I started as the sales manager at Denon. And when I joined Denon, they had done about $250,000 in business the whole year. And I joined them, and within 6 months we had done $500,000, and within 1 year we had done $3 million. And then the next year we did $7 million. So then I was promoted to being vice president of sales and marketing. And the rest really took off. In 1979, they began talking about digital audio, the compact disc, because Denon made the first digital recorder. It could record audio or video using a system called pulse code modulation, which is still used today. And as it turned out, because I had studied math at UC Berkeley, I understood that very well because I had worked with that kind of digital coding and the error correction and everything else. So I understood exactly how it worked and why it would work. So that really helped me, because then the industry formed a consortium of all the interested parties to help promote the compact disc. And because I understood how it worked and I could speak in plain English and I was a good salesman, they made me the vice president of the compact disc group. And we got to work with the automobile companies, with the record companies, with the movie companies, with all the retailers, with all the other brands making compact discs, with people that made the optical discs, all sorts of stuff. And it hugely helped me because I got a huge Rolodex of all these contacts. And within 5 years, of course, by 1984, we were selling more CDs than we were selling vinyl records, and the rest is history, because the compact disc, eventually we were able to put pictures on it, and then video, and then you ended up with what is now DVD or Blu-ray, and that led to the development of things like digital television, then HDTV, now 4K. All of these things I was able to work on because not only did I understand how they worked, but I had all the contacts in all these industries to do it, and they trusted me because we had worked so well together to promote all these things. They're always very happy to work with me to promote the rest of them. And of course, along the way, I was able to hugely grow Denon. As I said, when I joined them, they were doing like $20,000 a month. And when I left them, they were doing over $20 million a month, and often even more. So we really grew it a lot. And I had a very good reputation, and I, became very active in the industry. And of course, I learned a tremendous amount. It was a big difference from the little company that I had worked in and now a big company. And so, I knew what it was to hire a lot of people and run a very complicated company and start up, and how to develop products and how they were made in the factory. And I traveled to Europe, and I traveled to Japan, and I traveled to China. And so I really learned a lot there, and I was able to take that on to my other jobs.